One. Hey, thanks for joining us on today's webinar. Our topic is why now is the time for solar. My name is Mike Corso from Roovio Solar. My co-hosts are Ron Kamen from Earthkind Energy Consulting and Barrett Silver from Accord Power. A little bit about us. Ron is, as it says, he provides unparalleled expertise to spearhead the adoption of clean energy technology projects that significantly reduce costs. Roovio Solar is a solar advisory firm that matches projects with installers. And one of those installers is Accord Power, and Barrett Silver is here from Accord Power. Thanks, guys, for joining. Appreciate it. One of the things Ron said, which I wanted to feature right up front, this is a quote from Ron that I really resonated, that a major issue with fossil fuels and nuclear is their high cost and volatile prices. And the great thing about renewables is that once we build the infrastructure, the fuel is free. That's why last century's investment in hydropower now produces the least cost electricity in the state. And with renewables, the water flows, the wind blows, the sun shines, and we get cheap electricity. Ron, I may want you to talk a little bit about that hydropower project from Quebec that's going to be feeding New York City pretty soon. Is there anything you wanted to add, either of you guys?
Yeah, the only piece that I it's not really in that quote, but it still also pertains, is that when we think of energy, there's really three parts. There's electricity, which is what we're talking about today. It's also heating and cooling, and then there's transportation. And when you look at the renewable feed, the one piece that isn't in that quote is the fact that the heat underneath our feet, which is geothermal power, can also provide a lot of benefit. It's not generating electricity. Same with air source heat pumps as opposed to geothermal ground source heat pumps, but it's another form of renewables that's there to tap into that reduces costs. So a little slight difference on there, but just again, energy is not just electricity, but the electricity now is going to be supplying clean electricity through solar, etc., to our heating and cooling systems and our transportation systems. And that's a different conversation for another day, but just FYI.
Which, thank you, Professor. And that leads into what I wanted to say, which is that this is going to be the beginning of hopefully a series of webinars and podcasts that we do related to green energy. But today we are talking about solar from a very high level view. And we're really going to focus much of the conversation on what's happening in New York State and particularly in Westchester because of a phenomenal rebate program called the New York Sun program. So that's what we want you to walk away with today, is to understand that there are truly unprecedented, remarkable federal and state incentives for businesses and nonprofits. And all of us working in the industry, we feel like we are disrupting a 150-year-old monopoly utility model. We're replacing hundreds of years of fossil fuel usage as our predominant source of energy with new technologies that generate energy from sustainable resources. And yes,
Mike, is this a big deal?
This is a big deal. Businesses and nonprofits are saving millions of dollars moving away from fossil fuels. And Westchester offers a compelling case for organizations, businesses, and nonprofits to embrace solar energy, not only for environmental reasons, which we all know is very important in fighting back against these extreme weather events we've experiencing, but also because of substantial financial benefits. And we're going to get right into it. So why now? Why Westchester? So we're going to talk about the federal incentive. We're going to talk about again, in New York State through NYSERDA, we have this New York Sun megawatt block program. And then we're going to talk about just the positive impact on the environment, which is why there is such a movement to get to net zero in time. So the federal investment tax credit is 30%. It's a 30% tax credit. This is available to residential owners and commercial business owners. And I'm gonna have Barrett chime in here on the benefit for nonprofits and what happened last year through the the Inflation Reduction Act.
Right. So before the IRA was passed, if you were not a tax-paying entity, you really couldn't directly benefit from this 30% tax credit. And so there were a lot of third parties that sort of came up with their own mechanisms for working around this. And those are no longer necessary because now it's called direct pay, and not-for-profits, whether it's churches or not-for-profit businesses, municipalities, any non-tax-paying entity can directly participate and get a check from the federal government that stands in place of what would have been a tax credit.
So as we'll see in the case studies that we show in just a bit, again, we want to show real numbers, real projects that are happening right now. But what we'll see there is that a 30%, if an installation cost is $100,000, you're getting $30,000 from the federal government. Ron, Barrett, do we know the timing of when that's actually delivered? Does an installation have to be completed?
It has to be on the in-service date for that tax year. So that's
it has to be, you have to complete the project first, then you have to file it. If you're a nonprofit and you file your 990 PFs, it goes with them. If you don't have a fiscal year, you don't have a tax fiscal year where you're filing as a nonprofit, then you have to basically create one either in tune with your annual financial reporting that you do, or you can just create a date. So depending upon what you're doing, you want to talk to your tax advisor about how to structure that so that you're not waiting a whole year to get that reimbursement.
Okay. Let's just talk. I mean, there in New York State right now, we have the what is it? The Climate Leadership Consumer Protection Act. Is that the CLCPA?
Yeah, very good.
Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, correct?
Yes.
CLCPA, or the climate law, Mike.
And it is aggressive. It is very aggressive in terms of getting us to net zero.
Yeah, before we go to the next point, I just want to tack on one other mention. In addition to the 30% investment tax credit, or ITC, there is also accelerated depreciation on that system. And that can be worth, it's a 60% bonus depreciation in year one. That can be worth as much as another 20-some% in terms of how Uncle Sam is helping pay for these systems.
Right. So it's not unfair to say that part of these incentives and rebates, or part of what the government is contributing to the cost, would include that depreciation benefit that you're talking about.
And the one asterisk there is that although the IRA did make the direct pay available for not-for-profits, the bonus depreciation is still out of reach for those groups.
Right.
Yeah, that was my question, Barrett, whether the nonprofit community can benefit from the accelerated depreciation. I haven't heard any word that they could, and I guess you're confirming that.
Unless you have a magic trick that I haven't seen yet, I think the answer is no.
Yeah. And Leo, thanks for the question. Leo is from Sustainable Westchester. Leo is one of the bigger brains in the state of New York on solar.
Well, thanks. I'll try to live up to
that. So yes, we have aggressive goals as far as the environmental impact of going green. I think what are we looking at? 70% reduction of CO2 emissions by 2030. Okay. But yeah, nationwide, I mean, there's a big movement right now. And, thankfully the Inflation Reduction Act was passed a year and a half ago, which has really caused a lot of growth in green energy jobs and bringing battery plants to various states in the South. So there's a lot of exciting things going on. But again, these could all be for future discussions, but we really want to just give you this high-level view of what's happening in New York. So the thing I'm most excited about, and why I got involved in spreading the word, I feel like I'm on a mission to just shake people and educate them about the New York Sun rebate in particular through NYSERDA. Ron, do you want to take that? You're muted.
Nope, sure. Got it. Thank you. So this was an evolving process over a long period of time, but the basic bottom line is that the state recognized that there's a tremendous value of solar, and they've set in place a program. I was lucky enough to be part of the folks that helped initiate the current New York Sun program, which is now a multi-billion-dollar long-term program to fund solar. In the Con Ed territory, in particular in Westchester, one of the things that the state recognized is that as we phased out the Indian Point 2 nuclear power plant, which was 2,000 megawatts worth of electricity, that we needed to come up with a quick source of replacing that power, especially during the peak times when New York gets close to blackouts. If we have too much demand, people need electricity to cool their buildings, their homes, their workplaces. What happens is that we start stressing the grid, and eventually we can get brownouts and blackouts. To help make up for that shortfall from taking the Indian Point nuclear power plant out, which was done for a number of reasons, but the major one being that the plane that took out the Second World Trade Center tower actually was originally supposed to dive bomb into the Indian Point power plant. And if you think 9/11 was bad as it was, imagine if there was a significant threat or thought that the Indian Point nuclear waste was going to be distributed around the tri-state area. You can imagine what things would be like. So based on that, the governors over time took out Indian Point, which made a lot of sense from an environmental and consumer protection and resident protection and economic protection basis, but nonetheless made us now short on electricity, especially during peak powers. So the reason why the New York Sun program is so aggressive in Con Ed territory is that the fastest way to bring on new generation is to build solar on site, because you can do that within a year or two. If you're building a new power plant, it's 5 to 10 years or longer. If you're building transmission lines, which we're doing, it's also at least 3 to 7 years worth of time. So the state is doing transmission lines. They're bringing on new power plants in various different places, but in particular, in Con Ed territory, there's a very aggressive incentive that makes the numbers work tremendously well for anybody doing solar in Con Ed territory.
So Ron, get right to the actual number, why this is so attractive. How does it compare to the 30% that the federal government is giving? And is it based on size of the system?
Yeah, so there's a little different program for residents compared to commercial projects. But as I think, Mike, you're going to go through a couple of examples, right?
I am definitely leaning towards the commercial project. So thanks for making that clear.
Yeah, so in general, it's still very attractive for residents for all the reasons. But on a commercial basis, we're looking at somewhere between, well, depending upon the size of the project, 50 cents a watt to 80 cents a watt to $1 a watt, to potentially $1.20 a watt in certain targeted zones. And to give you a sense, commercial solar electricity is somewhere around $2.50 a watt or something less. So when you take $2.50 or $2.25 or wherever you're at in terms of $1 per watt on your commercial project, you take $1 a watt off, or whatever number the watt of size of the project is, whatever those watts are. Now you're down to almost half of the cost is being paid for with an upfront cash incentive that goes directly to installer, so you don't have to lay out the money yourself. And then you get this 30% federal tax credit. You got accelerated depreciation, which for most corporate clients in New York State is somewhere between 30 and 38%. So you have a great percentage of the project that's getting paid for by all these government incentives.
So just looking at that New York Sun program, this is a diminishing block grant, meaning that as we tap these funds, it will expire. So right now we're in block 2 of these 3 blocks, and I'm looking just at the commercial or non-residential building sizes of under 200 kilowatts. So for this, when we I don't know where we are. This might be a couple of months old, but
yeah, it's gone up since then.
Yeah, so we're going to be hitting into block 3 pretty soon, and by most estimates, I think that will expire this year.
Likely
this grant, and again for many buildings, they're seeing $1 per watt as the rebate that they're getting. So as you'll see in the following examples, a 100,000 watt system or a 100 kilowatt system is getting $100,000 from New York State, which is just amazing. So you can take, well, you'll see in the examples, but the key point here is that this time is of the essence. This is going away. We do hope that other programs will kind of replace it or step in, but there's no guarantee. But for right now, this is a phenomenal rebate. And if you go to other counties, now again, this is in Westchester. If you go to Putnam or Dutchess or even in New Jersey, Connecticut, you may get 20 cents, 25 cents per watt. So this is truly amazing that the rebate is at $1 per watt.
And the one point that I just want to mention real quickly is that if you're wondering where does all this money come from, the truth of the matter is that it's everyone who's paying a Con Ed electric bill, because there's a line item charge every month that's called the SBC, or the Societal Benefits Charge. And that's where the pool of money that these rebates come from originates.
Leo, do you have anything to contribute to that?
No, Barrett's exactly right. We've been paying into this benefit charge fund, or the regional renewable portfolio standard fund, on all of our bills, electric bills, every month, 1/10 of a penny for every kilowatt hour we consume. So what I used to tell residential customers is, this is your time to get your money back. When you apply for your solar incentive with NYSERDA, or your installer does it for you. That's how you lower your price. And when the block grant does go down, I agree that this block 2 that we're in now for non-residential buildings under 200 kilowatts, I agree that probably will be exhausted this year. And then when it is exhausted, it'll drop from $1 per watt to 80 cents per watt. So it's still pretty substantial.
Okay. And we're going down from block 2 to block 3. There's a drop down from
from $1 per watt to 80 cents per watt, but they have the same capacity of they're going to incentivize the same number of watts in block 3 as block 2. They're just going to give you 20 cents less.
Right. And block 1 was at $1.25.
$1.20, yeah.
$1.20. So
but it's real money. It's very significant money. We have
significant. Yeah. It's still a great rebate, but again, take advantage of it now while you can have that $1 per watt rebate versus 80 cents. So this brings us to our concluding remarks about and answers to the question, is solar really a no-brainer? I want to go through a few quick case studies that we're looking at right now. So I'm going to highlight 6 projects and explain what these numbers are. The only thing I want you to focus on is the system cost. So this is for an indoor sports facility. Here's a rough system cost. And then we have the federal and state incentives associated with that project, bringing us a net cost. And then we're going to talk about lifetime savings. So it's really, what are the incentives and what's the lifetime savings? That's what drives these decisions right now. And the chart below is just simply shown. Blue is always going to be the installation cost, okay? So blue is the installation cost. Red are the incentives that are paying for a good portion of that installation. And then yellow is the net cost. So 12% of the total project cost is being paid by this particular organization. In this case over here, we're looking at a religious organization. Their cost was $338,000. Again, you can see the total of the incentives is about 40%, and their out-of-pocket will be about 10 or 11%. Looking at it, before we go to some other examples, I want to just explain, when we talk about lifetime savings, now in this case, with this religious organization, they have a pretty sizable synagogue. Their lifetime savings is $2 million. So that's over the 25-year period of the project. How do we figure that out? Well, if you see this chart, the blue is showing what the cost would be if they did nothing, if they just kept paying Con Edison. So over years, over the 28 years, 30 years in this example, those rates are going to continue to escalate, as we've seen, especially over the past few years. When you purchase a solar system, you have that initial upfront cost of whatever your out-of-pocket is. Again, it could be as low as 10% of the installation cost. And then you're locking in, let's say you're going to finance, you're going to lock into a flat rate over the lifetime of that system. So that low rate you're paying month to month is represented by this red line. And that's, again, that's just giving us the answer to how do we save $2 million. Is that clear? Is there any other way we can say this that's going to wake people up and tell them that?
I would just harken back to Ron's quote at the beginning of the webinar here, because I mean, once you have the system up and running, the fuel is free. It is literally falling out of the sky every day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at how high our electric rates are compared to pretty much anywhere else outside of Hawaii in the country, you know that that's a lot of savings that we're generating.
So
another way to look at it is to take the net cost that you have there and divide it by the annual utility savings, which looks like in the case of the indoor sports facility, if I divide the 2.2 million by the 330 net cost, looks like it's about a 7-year payback. After which point you've earned all your money back, and now your electricity is truly free at that point.
Right.
Bill Murray says you're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels.
Actually, Mike, if you look at your next slide there, the one with the graph, I mean, what you see on that one is that the payback is, boy, looks like less than a year, right, on this particular project. So, so that's a 100% annual return on your investment, invested in your own property versus putting it into the stock market or wherever else. And if you can get 100% a year return on your investment, you're doing pretty darn good.
Exactly. So just looking at 4 other ones, we'll just go through these real quick. Again, the one I want to highlight is this movie theater, which is a nonprofit. Their cost was about $200,000, and they were, and that's represented by the blue here, and the red is showing what the total incentives that were available to them. So their net cost was negligible, lifetime savings of about $500,000. You know, my value proposition as the head of Roovio Solar, when I consult with someone, I say to them, look, if I can't get the government to pay for 80% of your installation cost and save you at least $500,000, I'm not going to take your business. So that I'm that confident in terms of what these incentives are doing right now and how they're dictating the decision making to go solar. Let's see if there's any other. There's another religious organization. Their system cost was $73,000. They have $72,000 in federal and state incentives combined. Net cost of $1,000, saving again over $400,000 over the lifetime of their system.
Mike, can you explain what comprises the federal and state incentives for those two on the bottom that are almost equal to this total gross system cost?
Yeah, so I didn't do this proposal. I wasn't involved in this proposal, but I recall that they also had a cultural grant of some kind for a green energy project. Yeah, and I'd have to get back to you on the one on the left.
Yeah, I would say your mileage may vary.
Yeah,
and there are agricultural projects that sometimes can get REAP grants, right? Rural electrification.
Yeah, we're working with the Westchester Library System, and we've found that some of the libraries are also getting a library grant for these types of projects as well. The main thing again to drive home here is that it doesn't take much to find out whether it makes sense for you or not. Basically, if you send any one of us your utility bills, and you'll have our contact information at the end, you send us a copy of your utility bill. We'll take a look at a satellite image of your location, make sure that the building is a good candidate for solar, and within 3 days we can tell you, we can show you a cash flow analysis to see just how favorable it would fall out in your particular situation. So that's something I really want to reinforce, that you don't have to overthink this in the early stages. All you have to do is take 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, send over a bill.
Put that abacus away.
Yeah, don't sweat it. Just, let us take do an analysis. It's always a free analysis, doesn't cost anything. And then it's a go or no go decision based on some pretty convincing numbers. We didn't talk much about residential solar, but when I do talk to a homeowner, I say, can we save you $60,000 with solar? Same rules apply here. We look at a copy of your bill. We look at the image of your house. If your house isn't too shaded, we run the cash flow analysis. And, on average for the projects that I've been involved with on the residential side, there are savings of $60,000. I've seen as high as $150,000, $200,000 over the lifetime of the system. And I think, we kept pretty close to our promise. Ron, I knew you thought we were going to go on forever, and maybe that's because I didn't let you talk as much as you could talk. But we are going to do this again. We're going to dig into specific elements of what we covered today in detail. But for today, I was just happy to have you guys with me to go over again this high level view. Our contact info is here. Ron can be found at earthkindenergy.com. And again, Ron is an expert in all things green energy, not just solar. So if you have questions about geothermal, et cetera, you can talk to Ron. Again, my solar consulting firm is Roovio Solar, and I match projects with installers throughout not only the tri-state area, but nationwide. And Barrett Silver, he's here on behalf of Accord Power, which is a phenomenal company that operates in the tri-state area, primarily the New York City area
and New Jersey.
So that's us. Thank you for joining, and look for an announcement about our next discussion. And we appreciate you attending today. Take care. Thanks, guys.